I pledge
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin with a moment of silence. And just like for the last couple of weeks, we'll keep in our thoughts and prayers the brave people of Ukraine. And also, if we could keep in our thoughts and prayers the family of Rosalie Roddick, who passed away this week, former Plymouth County administrator. She moved to Whitman in 1961, had a part-time position in Town Hall, worked at the county hospital in Hanson, and then joined the Plymouth County Commissioner's office. She's also the mother of Debbie Seeley, one of the best reporters that we've had, covering us when local newspapers used to cover us, and also Mike Seeley, the town moderator. Her wake is on Friday from 4 to 7 at McKinnon Funeral Home on Washington Street. Meeting's being recorded and televised by WHCA. I'd like a motion to approve bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no public here, we'll pass right over public forum. Approval of meeting minutes, open session, February 15th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And March 1st, 2022, open session.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We're going to try to get through some of this business before 6:15 or so. When our attorney shows up, we'll be going into an executive session. So we see what we can get done before then. Act on the request of Margaret Schnabel to be appointed to the position of Associate Member of the Historical Commission for the remainder of a 3-year term through June 30th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Town Clerk Don Valley to reappoint Adelaide M. Carew to the position of Registrar of Voters for the period April 1st, 2022 through March 31st, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is Carew the way to pronounce it, or is it Carey? It's
Carew.
Okay. I went through life with people mispronouncing my name, so I'm kind of OCD about that. Act on the request of Kathleen Woodward on behalf of the Whitman Recreation Commission for permission to use the Town Hall Auditorium on Saturday, April 9th, 2022 in order to conduct an egg hunt.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Take action to renew the taxi livery license and taxi livery driver certificate for Eric Young, doing business as Sleep Near Transportation, 8 Danica Drive, for the April 1, 2022 through March 31st, 2023, subject to the receipt of all required paperwork and license fees.
So moved.
Second. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is to discuss town policy regarding minimum wage. Justin, you wanted this brought up today?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think the board will remember about a year and a half ago, we made a decision to raise the minimum wages of all election workers up to at least the state minimum wage over the next couple of years. I think this proposal would just be to set all hourly employees not under a collective bargaining agreement to follow the same trajectory. That would be my recommendation.
Did you make that motion?
I do, so moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
What do you say, if I may, minimum wage is at this point?
$14.25 right now. January 1st next year, it'll be $15.
Just to briefly let the board know, so the only employees who right now are not at minimum wage are some recreation, part-time, intermittent, seasonal recreation commission employees. So this would obviously bring those folks up to $14.25 an hour now, and if approved, $15 an hour beginning on January 1st.
Anybody else?
Has a recreation, have they voiced an opinion on this? Is it gonna hurt their budget, or, I know that, they got a late start this year, and I know that they're advertising right now and trying to get people to, have their, enroll their children into the program.
Right.
I was just wondering if, how they feel about this.
Andy?
Only because I overheard the conversation. They do not have the money in their budget to do this, so it would, they will need an increase in their budget from the town, flat out. That there's no way they can fund it without directly raising pool passes. So they will need, I think it was $32 a day for the season.
I was estimating anecdotally, looking at the past few years and the past full year of a park program in the summer, probably about $2,000 to $3,000. I'm not sure if that matches out. I have to do some math about if that matches out the $32 per day. But but certainly it could be done at town meeting. We could do it, later during the fiscal year 2023. If it was, as Selectman Lemontina says, clear that it was going to be insufficient, we could do a transfer during the fiscal year. So certainly we could go fix it.
I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
They've already laid it out.
saw
They
it,
cannot afford it in their budget. So it's either we are gonna up the budget now, or we're gonna cause a shortfall in their budget.
Right,
Or this will
right.
be passed right on to the people paying pool passes.
Yeah, what I don't want to
Went up
happen
last
is
year.
that this, the kids' program, the park program, has to end a month or so early because of what we've done, so. I don't know if we can hold off until town meeting, until we get the funds?
Would need to change the budget for town meeting.
Yeah,
And
so-
increase it enough so that it doesn't do what Randy says it would do.
Right. So if the board approves this tonight, the next version of the budget you see will include sufficient funds to fund this.
Well, can we make the motion depending on town meeting approval of funding?
Of course, it's depending upon town meeting approval.
Not if we motion to increase the, all salaried, and all all employees that don't meet the minimum wage, if we vote to bring them up to the minimum wage, is automatically they're brought up to the minimum wage. And if we start paying them now, town meeting doesn't approve the budget,
Well,
then we don't have it.
They don't start until June 30th.
But you can't hire somebody, tell them they're gonna be making $15 an hour, and then all of a sudden say, town meeting didn't approve it, you're gonna go with $14.25. You can't do that.
Right.
You're saying that the park program doesn't start till really the end of the fiscal year anyway?
Right.
Is that what you said?
Wouldn't start until
So if we change the new budget that's coming out to the proper appropriation, then it shouldn't matter,
Right.
right? As long as it's not gonna fall into this fiscal year.
Correct.
That's,
And it's a minimal amount of money, I think, is in regards to the whole budget, I think it should be, no problem.
I agree with the concept of doing it. I do know.
Right, yeah.
I heard quite a bit of this conversation that right off the bat, once the pool opens, if they were not to get an increase, it starts causing a significant loss daily. It's 2 employees, 8 hours a day. It's I guess the gate attendants, and I agree they should be brought up, but
Yep.
it needs to be, if we're gonna do this, then we need to correct it.
And the
Before it
fact that
starts.
people, a lot of businesses, et cetera, are having trouble getting people, we certainly don't want to lose people over short money like this. We want to keep the program going. So I think we should just suggest the new budget.
I think it's a timely time to do it.
Right.
I mean, we've had the recommendation to do it, and you have time to adjust
Certainly.
whatever budget needs to be adjusted before town meeting, and then town meeting takes care of it.
Yes.
No? And you can get up at town meeting and speak in favor of it.
I'd be happy to. It's,
Very good.
these people working in the hottest part of the year. And
Well, I have no argument that they deserve it. I'm just wondering, I don't want to cut the recreation meeting, the recreation year down
Right.
short.
No, I wouldn't either.
If anything, I'd like to increase it. But
Oh, yeah,
So the motion, just so that Dan is clear, the motion will be to increase salaries to minimum wage.
Yep.
Whatever that is, whatever it becomes, whatever it is for next year. And that each budget in the town warrant that we will eventually vote on will include those increases.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll amend the motion to reflect, yeah, that as well.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. Draft town meeting warrant. 5 minutes.
Yes, so you have that version, you have a first version in front of you. Obviously, this is not the end of the conversation.
So basically, this is like, the conversation is handing it out.
Basically, just a first reading, right?
First reading, okay.
First reading. So happy to go through the highlights or not tonight, up to the board.
Have you all had time to go through it? Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I just have one, Mr. Chairman. And this will need to go through, probably get a ruling from town council of if all regional school warrant articles need to be placed on, or does the Board of Selectmen have final say of what articles go on?
Looking for an opinion.
Are you asking me right now?
No,
Oh, you're not? Okay.
no,
This is something that we can do.
no. That was just formally saying, I think we should get that opinion just after listening to their meeting. The school committee seems to be under the assumption that anything they ask for, we have to put on. So just clarity on that before we finalize it.
So to that point, two things I should mention. One is that the schools did request the $54,000 that we had discussed previously regarding mold cleanup, but not capital. You know, we had that conversation about how, collectively we're not seeing that as capital, and therefore under the regional agreement. So that currently is not in this document, based on that discussion. And so then we can go and have that.
54,000 is not in the,
It is not currently in this draft warrant, correct. And so one other thing that I just want to mention briefly on a different subject, that the final articles right now, currently Articles 42 and 43, those are having to do with with property tax exemptions for lower income seniors, and in another case, Gold Star parents. Those are a little bit in flux. I had some more conversation with our principal assessor, Kathy Keefe, today about that. I definitely want to, I think we as a town definitely want to pursue some tax relief, especially as we see the sewer rates are obviously going up. I think as everyone certainly here knows, obviously we have some larger capital projects down the road. So I think that those might sort of shift a little bit, and in particular, the senior, what's not included in here, but what I would like to include in the next version is some amendments to expand the property tax exemptions provided through the senior tax work-off program. So, just FYI.
and we can get an opinion from the attorneys about the school committee's role in establishing the warrant. I suppose they could ask for something to be on a warrant, and then what also gets registered on a warrant, and none of that's been registered so far, is whether or not the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen approve it. Although we wait a minute, let me check that. Yeah, our approving the warrant would mean that, in the case of the schools, would mean we approve placing their thing on the warrant.
Yes.
The vote's really not taken.
Well, you're approving the
We're
warrant,
approving the warrant, so, yeah,
so you're approving the content of the warrant.
That's right, that's right.
Yep.
Okay. We can rattle that around before the meeting, yes.
Just a quick question for Lincoln. So the citizens petition accessory apartment appears to be, there are two articles, one with bylaw study committee. You just expand on that one a little bit?
Certainly. So, the proponent, or proponents, then the primary proponent of that's Articles 40 and 41, originally came with signatures for Article 41. There were some drafting problems with that. It's not lawful. It wouldn't achieve what the proponents are attempting to achieve regarding accessory apartments. So worked and got some assistance from town council, got him a version that would achieve legally, what he's hoping to achieve. He went out and achieved the sufficient number of signatures for that. But because both received the sufficient number of signatures, basically there's no convenient way to take the wrong one off the warrant. So I think simplest way to do this is to have town meeting, make a decision on Article 40 on the merits, and then indefinitely postpone Article 41. And the primary proponent is,
Which one is the good one?
the good one is the first one, Article 40. So,
Okay. Anybody else have any questions as this first draft? Okay. Well, we're 2 minutes late. Need to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Exception 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second?
Yes.
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 And we'll be we'll be actually having 4 executive sessions this evening, and after all 4 are completed, we'll be coming into open session. Yes,
The collective bargaining,
right.
there are,
You want me to read the other ones too?
to read all
Read
of them,
those?
I'm
But the
sorry.
first one we're going to be dealing with is the collective bargaining.
But then you're gonna come out to open and vote to go into exec for the second one?
No, I think it'd be much better if if
Exactly.
I
So-
read all of this right now.
Yes, it would be, and a vote
And I will do
on
it.
each,
I'll-
on each
I will
reason,
do it.
thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. The other 3 executive sessions are pursuant to the first one is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 1, to discuss the physical condition or mental health rather than professional competence of a police department employee. The next one is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, 21A, Exception 1, to discuss the physical condition or mental health rather than professional competence of a police department employee. And the third one is the same, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exemption 1, to discuss the physical condition or mental health rather than professional competence of a police department employee. We have 3 executive sessions to deal with that, and we will we'll stay in executive session and go into them, and then we'll come.
We did he said the 4th one, and we voted it. So I'll make the motion for all the other ones.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, there's
Yes.
one more to be read though, right?
No, that,
We read it.
that's the one we already
That's the
read.
one that he read.
Yeah, that's the collective bargaining.
so we're doing them out of order.
Okay, Randy?
Yes.
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 Okay, thanks, Michelle.
Okay, so we're in exec?
We are. Okay, next item on the agenda is to schedule the next meeting date, the 12th and the 26th of April.
And the
And on the
12th,
12th of April, we
6:15.
may begin, we'll begin early, because we have, we'll start off with executive session on that day.
Yeah, that was
And
at
that's the day-
7:15, I think you said, 6:15?
6:15. We'll start at 6:15.
And the 26th will
On
be
the
at 7?
Yeah, and the 26th will be a normal meeting at 7.
We're gonna have dinner.
We got to give you something for wearing a green tie on St. Patrick's
Yeah.
Day.
Hey, St. Pasquale Day.
Okay, so, that's that. Let's get some other stuff done before we have a couple of scheduled meetings, one at 7:05 and one at 7:10. So let's do you have a quick update on COVID-19?
Yes. So
Things are looking good?
I think folks know things are looking good. We have the lowest positivity rates since August 5th last year.
Wow.
Nice.
2.46%, and the lowest number of positive cases at 17, once again since August 5th of last year. So we're certainly going in the right direction regarding COVID-19. We continue to have tests at Town Hall every day, free test kits, rapid test kits at Town Hall, the Senior Center, and the library. We'll continue to do that until they're gone.
Okay, announce the new DPW employee, Nathan Stewart. I guess we just did.
I guess you just did. So just wanted to, again, welcome Nathan to the town.
Great. Under old business, FY 2023 operating budget.
Yes, so you have in front of you the most recent version. It's the same version that distributed last week. Only 3 changes from the original version presented by me at the beginning of February.
Yeah.
That is, and these are things that have changed since that. One is $8,500 for the projected amount for the debt for the feasibility project for the middle school. So that number came in after the beginning of February from the schools. So that number is in there now, again, $8,500. There is an additional amount that just came in, I think, a week and a half ago from Treasurer Collector Mary Beth Carter, that there will be, it's in the water sewer budget. It's not on the direct general fund budget, but in the water sewer enterprise budget for debt. We didn't know at the time that there would be a debt payment for the force main project. There will be. So that new amount to be due in fiscal year 2023 is included. And then finally, heard from Bruce Martin recently, since the last discussion we've had about the budget, that according to the work plan that he's now working through with the town's consultant, that stormwater management, he is projecting that $49,000 is now needed rather than the $85,000 that was in the budget at the beginning of February. I am trying to set up the date. She wasn't available tonight from Environmental Partners to discuss that, but now that we know April 12th, we'll try and get her in on April 12th.
That's a FinCom joint meeting.
Yeah, I'd just assume keep that meeting between us and the FinCom.
So we can schedule her for April 26th.
Great. Now, are those 3 changes in this?
They are.
They are, okay. They're
So
not
those are
added to that. So
those are the only substantive changes in there. There have been a few sort of wording changes to make things clearer, but those are the only substantive changes.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Okay, easy peasy, non-mandated busing. Now, John Galvin and Sean Kane have been working on a proposal to look at different ways of dealing with this topic, and they're with the Finance Committee now, perhaps, and they thought that they would be able to be here probably between 7:15 and 7:30, I think. So we'll have to put that off until they're ready, because they're going to make a presentation. Unless anyone wants to introduce the topic now so that we're prepared before they come in. Randy, do you want to?
I will speak on it. This is an issue that I think we've talked quite a bit, and this board has absolutely shown favor of supporting non-mandated busing for our kids, which I don't think that was ever the question. Some 14 months ago, myself, a couple other elected school committee members appointed FinCom members. I don't know.
I was there.
Lincoln was there. We had a presentation, and basically the major question was, this number is getting higher and higher. It's really getting to be a big number at this point. Is there a way to kind of take a look at this and see if there's a more fiscally sound way to bill the towns for this? And we had an elaborate presentation by the superintendent and his administrator that handles this. And we also had a commitment at that time that he was going to look into it, and I believe a time frame was before the school year started. They were going to see how they could better handle this. That time came and went, and as you may be aware, a couple weeks ago, this hit a school committee agenda where I don't believe our board was painted in the best light. That we were kind of portrayed as looking to cut this out to save a few dollars, which I don't believe that was ever the case. I think we've shown resounding support for non-mandated busing and the service that provides for parents and the kids. The fruits of that meeting were actual numbers placed on this. And these gentlemen once you saw the numbers, it's pretty obvious that the town basically is subsidizing mandated costs as well as possibly the town of Hanson to a far lesser extent. I think what you'll see in their presentation this evening is both towns have been hurt by this, Whitman considerably, and I'm sure they will be able to explain it. It's just disappointing because once the numbers actually are out there and presented, it is pretty obvious. And from that point, I would let them, or if Lincoln,
Yeah, I'm sure they'll get into this, but just to briefly put a little color regarding the numbers on what Selectman Lamatina is speaking of. So, as a quick reminder, in the current fiscal year budget, it's $411,000 that is appropriated towards non-mandated busing from Whitman. The initial request from Superintendent Simonak in his initial budget presentation last month was for $478,000. The data that Mr. Galvin and Mr. Kane have presented would seem to indicate that our actual non-mandated busing, rather than the supplementation, as Selectman Lamatina said, of mandated busing, is actually going to be about $131,000, and that is the correct number for fiscal year 2023. And then the one other piece of that is that the mandated costs, the state reimburses for those costs for the busing that is within the designated radius of the schools that's required by state law to be provided by the school district. So I think another key question, in addition to Mr. Galvin and Mr. Kane presenting this, is we will obviously see what the school committee certifies tomorrow for a budget amount and for proposed assessments to each of the towns. With the, at last week's meeting, with the amount that seems likely to be certified by the school committee, that amount, we could cover it, the town of Whitman, without using one-time revenue, but only if we recognize these savings on non-mandated busing. If the non-mandated busing was either continued to be, off in this separate line, or alternatively baked into the assessment, and the assessment went higher than the scenario 3 that seems likely that it might be certified, then the town of Whitman, under the current budget scenario, would not be able to fund that budget without the use of one-time revenue. So just to give a little more, specific numbers on what this means for the Whitman budget.
Question. Does the administration and/or the school committee question Mr. Galvin's information? Do they not believe that it's in fact true? Are they thinking that he's wrong?
I would let him answer that. I'm under the assumption that, I don't know if this has even been presented to the full school committee yet. It's been handled in their budget subcommittee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm under the assumption that prior to an email to our chair and Lincoln this morning, they had agreed with his numbers.
Okay.
And his numbers are actually, he's not pulling these numbers out of thin air.
Right.
He's getting them right from their business manager, who's getting them right from their transportation company.
Well, this leads me to my point on this is, at our meeting last week, we were chided as not being good partners. Somehow we were trying to cut them out of the process, when that wasn't the reason for the meeting. And now you look at this, is it being disingenuous? Is it a shell game? Is it just mistakes? But when you have mistakes that cost the town of Whitman this kind of money, and then you back with the statutory method, time and time again, this is, oops, we made a mistake at the expense of the taxpayers of this town. And at some point, it can't be mistakes every time. So to chide us at our last meeting that we're not good partners, when you see these kind of facts coming every year, time and time again, it's a little bit of the boy cried wolf to me. And we're always on the end of being the bad guys. They're not our numbers, they're their numbers, and they're giving us wrong numbers, time and time again. I find it offensive. I think that this board deserves an apology from the chair of the school committee and the vice chair for what they said at the last meeting. I found it offensive, and I just don't think it was factual.
And what I will say is I don't know if there could have been a better, we all sat in a meeting. We saw a presentation. And then even when there was a cut recommended by, I believe, the Finance Committee last year, this board said no. The superintendent has made us a commitment. He's going to look into it. That commitment was not ever realized, nor do I believe that it was ever actually looked into, because they had the numbers before the presentation. He still gave a presentation that painted us in a negative light. And obviously, there is no look for savings. And I'm sorry, but with the email that comes today, it's hearkening back to, it was legal, folks. And that's what you're seeing again. And
How can it be called legal, though, when they're obviously miscounting the difference between mandated and non-mandated kids? Right?
I think what they're doing is, and again, I don't want to jump ahead of Mr. Galvin, because he can explain it a lot better than I can.
I had
But
a long, yeah.
there is a cost for mandated busing.
Right.
And really how you saw this is in their own work. That, if Whitman, if you cut this out, you only save 60, and these are hypothetical numbers off the top of my head, $60,000. But if you look at the column, all of a sudden their bus reimbursement goes up $500,000.
Yeah.
The numbers didn't make sense.
That's right.
That what they're not figuring out their mandated cost, and then the towns pay what we should pay.
Yeah, to me, this just reinforces the need for an audit, because it's the same situation as the statutory method, where it was just, this is how we've done it since 1993 when the agreement was ratified.
Yeah.
And we haven't looked at the formula since. It just, yeah.
The thing about the statutory method is that the school committee should have known, at least since 2007, when the state reminded them that there's this thing called the statutory method. The school committee should have known that in order to do anything else, they had to actually ask for a vote. And they didn't ask for a vote.
And I'd be willing
And
to
6 of
bet-
the members of the school committee were from our town, but they didn't ask for the vote. That went on for a long time until Randy and Chris George sort of uncovered it.
Right.
They uncovered the whole thing. That was a lot of money lost there.
Right.
So that's example number one.
Yep.
Example number two was the circuit breaker mess that we heard about a couple of weeks ago, where there was, it wasn't handled correctly.
Yeah.
And then this, it's, I've always been a strong advocate of the town taking care of its non-mandated busing people, because I know that the impetus for that came from townspeople,
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Yeah,
But boy, I'll tell you, my faith is shaken right now.
yeah.
And I'd be willing to bet
I
that
don't
there
know if
are
I'm-
other regional school districts in the state that maximize their state reimbursements for mandated busing. I don't know why we wouldn't
Yeah.
ask.
Well, it would be interesting to listen to John and Sean
And
when
what
they come in.
bothers me, I think, is the fact that board members here in Whitman and active citizens find these things out on behalf of the town, but not the people that should be in charge of it.
Yeah, and then I don't want to go into this too long right now, because we have some people who are here for a hearing. But
Leaves a bad
I'm
taste in
going
my mouth.
to save my bile on that and for until later. It was just too much grandstanding going on last week.
Yep.
Grandstanding from people who knew better. Okay. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. It's reached 7, we're 4 minutes late. We're here for a scheduled meeting with a public hearing with respect to the application of Jai Maruti.
Yes,
Is it Jai or?
it's J. Maruti.
J. Maruti, LLC, doing business as Whitman Convenience Store for a change of license classification in connection with the wine and malt packaged goods store liquor license currently held on the premises at 183 South Avenue. The applicant wishes to change the category of the current license to an all-alcohol packaged goods store liquor license. This approval, if we approve this, it will be subject to receipt of the license, advertising and mailing fees, and the final approval of the ABCC. Would someone like to make a motion to approve it?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hey, Lincoln, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so briefly, the town had 3 all-alcohol beverage licenses. With the census change from the federal census in 2020, due to the state formula and the state law, it increased by 1 to 4. Whitman Convenience Store uniquely amongst all current purveyors in Whitman over the last few years has on an annual basis been checking in, I think, and seeking the possibility for an all-alcohol license. They contacted the ABCC, and ABCC informed you folks of that availability of that additional license due to the change from the census. And so now they are here applying for it.
Okay, good. Anyone have any questions?
No, they've been waiting a while. They've been waiting a while, yeah.
Did they come before, did you come before?
Yeah.
And request this?
No,
We didn't come for a hearing,
No?
that was a different store that had asked for us to seek special legislation to add.
Other side, the Regal, I think that store on, around the
Yeah,
circle.
this is our first time coming for the hearing.
Yeah. I asked the same question.
All
Lori
right,
answered for me.
I knew I kind of remembered.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
No?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank
luck.
you. Thank you so
Good luck.
much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
Okay. Okay. Sure, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank-
Okay.
Have a
Good
good
luck.
one. Yep.
See ya.
now we have another hearing at 7:10, but we don't see them.
They out there?
Is 7:10. Yeah, Randy, that was DJ's
Huh?
off 58. I don't know why they didn't apply to this one, but
Is that the one that with Clayton's was?
yeah.
Oh, yeah. With
No.
Clayton's.
No one here?
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we still keep going? And I'm just looking.
That's the old Fleming's, right? Whitman Convenience Store?
Yeah, I believe that's what that is.
Yeah, I was about to say something as far as that meeting last week was concerned. The meeting was disrupted by
Yeah.
the chair of the school committee, who made it sound, I think, like he was coming to a meeting that he didn't understand at all. And I have on my phone texts that go back to March 1st, in which he had some reservations about the meeting because the Hanson people wanted a full presentation of the budget from the superintendent, and we did not. We just wanted to be able to ask questions of the superintendent or Mr. Stanbrook. They were there about stuff they had already said, and we did not believe that we had to have a full presentation because there was an opportunity for us to have watched it all on the tube, and Randy had been there. And basically, the meeting that we were having, he knew was going to take that form over the course of a week's conversations. The only glitch was perhaps that I was under the impression that Lincoln was giving them the three of them a formal invitation, Lincoln apparently conversed with them instead of that. But it's still, so that
They all attended.
They were
they were there,
notified.
but they were there. And they were there in the way that the chairperson of the school committee, wanted them to be there. He made it clear that they were only observers. So it was a grandstand play to get attention paid, and I'm not sure who the audience was for that grandstanding play. Randy wanted to straighten them out, and probably my mistake. Jeff was up to talk. Jeff was up at the podium, kept going back and forth. I wanted to be courteous to him, and so I cut Randy off, and I probably shouldn't have done that. And I would apologize for that too, because the person needed a talking to, and Randy was perfectly capable of giving him a talking to. I was hoping, and I felt like Randy was hoping that night, was that he would be able to ask some questions of Jeff. And it didn't happen. So that's just, and I don't think the two boards of selectmen are the reason why it didn't happen. It's just, for a guy that's been on the school committee, who supported school committees, it was a very disappointing evening, and I don't know what,
Yeah.
I'll listen to other people more now in the future as far as that's concerned. It looked to me like the thing on non-mandated busing, or maybe more specifically, the issue that we're having around mold, and whether it's a capital expense or not. I think, Lincoln, if I understood you, they've replaced the request for the $50,000 for mold with a request for $100,000 for fans.
There are two requests. So,
Okay, one of them's in the middle school, right?
no, there are two requests regarding the middle school.
For fans,
One for fans
Yeah.
at $100,000.
Yeah.
right?
And one for $54,000, the amount that we had spoken about several weeks ago.
Yeah.
For the mold abatement,
Oh,
which is not a capital expense,
okay.
right? It is a cleaning
Maintenance
expense.
expense.
And, right, by definition, right, so we, the town of Whitman, according to the vote of town meeting, according to the policy adopted by the Board of Selectmen, define capital as items of a useful life of 5 years or more, and
Right.
a cost of $20,000 or more. So this doesn't have a
So
useful
what they've
life
done
of more
is-
than 5 years.
So they've said, okay, we won't ask for that money as a capital expense, but we'll ask for it as an operating expense.
We'll ask for it as a separate article.
Right.
Yeah, so it's basically nuts to you. And $100,000 for fans in a building that may not exist in 5 years. $100,000, that's another one of those.
And that's for what, the gym? Is that what it was for?
Correct. Those are the two gymnasiums. It's relevant to tell the board that the capital committee, our Whitman capital committee, will be reviewing the school's capital budget on Thursday. So certainly, I think your questions will be certainly a lot of the questions that we'll
And
have then.
they will prioritize what projects we spend our capital money on, that committee.
That's my kid's birthday. No, that's Friday.
Yeah,
If I may, just going back to the meeting, Carl, and truly, I appreciate what you just said. I really do. Also, I had in-depth conversations with Mr. Howard prior to that meeting. Made it very clear to him that, we had simply, our hope was to invite the superintendent and the business manager to answer questions about a budget that they had presented, that the school committee has yet to certify. I guess I'm taking some heat for calling the superintendent a department head, but he presented the budget. Also, we invite the chair of the school committee as a conduit to take anything back to his board. At no time, I don't think any of us had the impression that we're up there negotiating.
Right.
And that was a point that you made really clearly, actually. At that meeting, Laura Kemet and Randy made points that were totally clear to anyone there, if they listened, if they were to listen.
You know, it's just an informational session. And it really is a shame that we couldn't have that. So,
And, you know, for me, I think it's a lost opportunity. We had a good chance to have a deep discussion between Hanson and Whitman. And we've been accused for, over the years, of not doing that and not being on the same page. Well, we made a real good effort to try to get on the same page with our partner. And it just was a very short discussion where it was hijacked, and we couldn't have that deep discussion. And to be have both towns on the same page going into this budget season would be an enormous help for both communities. And I just think we were robbed of that fact.
Yeah, we could have exercised more control. We could have continued the discussion even though there was what I called grandstanding going on. But we didn't. We blew that opportunity ourselves as well. But it's what it is. And you know, you guys are right on time. We're at non-mandated busing. Randy has talked a little bit about it, and Lincoln has talked a little bit about it. But why don't you guys come up to the table and fill us in?
Thanks for having us. Sean Kane, 31 Forest Street.
Yes.
John Galvin, 41 High Street.
Maybe just to
Citizen
give-
Galvin and Citizen Kane.
Yeah. Maybe I can start just by giving some background about how we kind of led us to
Sure.
this. Well, last year I think is a good starting place where the Finance Committee had been putting a lot of pressure on the schools to do more research and really to find some efficiencies in non-mandated busing. So it's been a standing item on their agenda, and I've been trying to pay attention to those guys, and it's obviously a priority for them. So the information that we got last year from that presentation was helpful, but we didn't have the numbers, you know, so we had conceptually gave us a better understanding about how things worked, but not the numbers behind it to really dig in, you know. This year, when they followed up with another presentation, we had the numbers. And it was helpful to see some of those numbers and how it came together, how they actually started to compute the math. A couple big things that stood out for me as I was looking at that for the first time. The first one was, and I felt this last year, and I kind of kicked myself for not following up more assertively, but we're being charged a service for non-mandated busing, close to $500,000. They were asking, I think, for $70,000 more this year, you know, so close to $500,000. But when they did the math on what would happen if we got rid of non-mandated busing, the savings didn't equate to what we were being charged. So that just doesn't sit well with me, you know, and there may be legitimate reasons for that, but for me, it felt like, how can that be? If you're getting charged $500,000, and if we as a town decided not to have it, how can it be that we wouldn't save $500,000? It would be significantly less savings. So that discrepancy definitely didn't sit well with me. The second thing that really caught my attention was, this is using John Stanbrook's numbers. Down below, at the bottom of his numbers, he calculates how much reimbursement we get from the state for mandated busing, okay? So right now, he gives a certain number. It's like $1.3 million for mandated busing, right? But the interesting thing was, if we decided to get rid of non-mandated busing, the amount of mandated reimbursement we got, or we would get, went up by $350,000. So I was thinking, well, that's kind of odd. If they got rid of non-mandated busing, all of a sudden the amount of reimbursement goes up by $350,000, and it's not short money. I mean, that's a lot of money. That $3 out of $4 that we spend would then get reimbursed from the state. So the combination of those two things definitely didn't sit well with me, and I brought it up at the school committee meeting, but I feel strongly about it, but we hadn't done the research yet, and that's when John reached out to me, and we decided to roll up our sleeves and try to just get into this that much more.
Yeah, so we started taking a look at the spreadsheet that we sent you actually earlier today. Just a quick explanation. Scenario 1 in that spreadsheet is how the district currently does it now. They basically take their costs, they divide it out by every single rider who are mandated and not. It's like 2,700 riders, and they come up with a price of $646 per pupil. Then they take that 646 and they multiply it times the amount of non-mandated buses riders that Whitman has. That happens to be 755. So they multiply that out. It comes to the 487 that they are saying they're going to assess us. And then they do the same thing with Hanson. What's left is then what they've identified as mandated, and that's what they then submit into the state for reimbursement. The problem we had is we looked at some of the other scenarios that Mr. Stanbrook supplied on a sheet. Scenario 3 specifically shows us what happens if Whitman decides not to do non-mandated buses, take all of those riders out of the formula.
Let me step in real quick. So just to kind of like highlight that first scenario again. Basically, they just take the total cost and divvy it up per pupil, just straight per pupil. That's how they do it. That's the current formula. You take the total cost and divvy it up just straight per pupil, which for a bunch of reasons, and you might want to get into, that doesn't.
Isn't that a double payment?
Well, that was my first thought. Like, geez,
I
that
mean,
feels
why
like
wouldn't
a
you
double.
subtract what the state's giving them, then go with the challenge?
Well, they do that in the formula that they have, but it's the way they calculate what the state's giving them is what the issue is. Okay?
If I can, I challenged that a long time ago when I was on the finance committee, and a question I had was, if someone's living in, I would say Route 14, the Brockton-Whitman line, a student, and they're coming up Route 14 to go to the middle school, and the bus only has a few students, they would cover Hogg Memorial Homeland Drive, but they were considered non-mandated busing, even though they're on a mandated bus.
Right.
Well, there is no real mandated or non-mandated
Well,
buses
right,
at
I
this
know
point.
that. But
And that's obvious by the way.
We feel that, though. We feel that. If
Yeah,
the bus
yeah.
is going 2 miles away and then on the way back, and that's a mandated bus, like
Right.
on the way
Why are we
back,
charging?
picks a
Why are we
student
getting
up that's only a
charged?
mile away, how do you work that into cost?
Right.
How do you charge those two the same when the buses
Right.
already
That's the
have
question
to
I
go
had.
through?
Right now,
Years
they're
ago.
being charged the same.
Right now, they're being charged the same. So what we looked at in the scenario 3 is saying, well, if they remove all of the non-mandated Whitman students from the program that First Service has that calculates the route, and they run the routes again, and they only save $131,000 when they do that, isn't that really the true cost of our non-mandated busing? Not 487,
Right,
but 131, right? So you do the same thing for Hanson. Hanson is the scenario 4 column where they took all the Hanson students out of the program, ran it again. This is all the buses that we need. It was $101,000 less. So isn't that the true cost of Hanson's non-mandated busing? So now that number obviously for non-mandated is significantly less. The rest is now mandated. That's significantly higher mandated cost than what they're calculating. If you look, they even calculated in scenario 4, the price per pupil is $865.
Yeah.
So that's actually the true cost of a mandated rider, not 646,
And
right?
I don't know if you guys saw the email today, but there
Yeah.
does seem to be some issues, and we're not privy to exactly what's going on, but it may be that this exact formula doesn't work. But something like this could be really beneficial, because if you think about it, not only would the towns be paying significantly less, but we'd also be getting significantly more in state aid. So it's a win-win. The amount of mandated busing that John just alluded to, that cost would go up, which would be reimbursed for, and the amount of non-mandated busing would go down, which would be in charge less for. So it's a win-win.
Win-win-win, because the district actually can assess less as well, a little bit less.
Sure.
So
Or they could get what they'd like to get, like all-day paid kindergarten.
You have to
and
be
it's
you have to
basically
be
covered.
careful on how you can reimburse, how you
Right.
redistribute this,
Right.
because the amount of savings that Whitman realizes in this calculation is significantly more than what Hanson.
Right.
So there's only so much more that if the will of the committee was, well, we can reinvest some of that. There's only so much we can do, because Hanson's only, in our one scenario, is only saving like $32,000 or $38,000, and we're saving $374.
Can they, as a region, say, okay, we free kindergarten to Whitman students only, not to Abington? Not Abington, yeah, Hanson? It's gotta be one or the other,
Yeah.
it's gotta be both
I
on
believe so.
none.
Yeah.
And again, this is also our money. This is
Right.
not in the, this is paid outside by the town. So, I mean, what happens once the savings is realized is I think, a discussion for another, probably another time. I do have a couple questions on this, John. Like, I know the sheet you've given us says prepared by you, but these aren't your numbers, right?
Well, the sheet itself is mine, but all the calculations on the left side of the form are Mr. Stanbrook's, and then all the calculations on the right side of the form are the ones the formulas that Sean and I have been coming up with. And yeah, I'm the Excel guru, so I'm the one that printed the form out, so.
And we kind of know that he got his numbers right from First Student, right?
Yeah, so basically there's a program that the school has that they plug all the riders in, addresses everyone, and they know who's mandated, who's non-mandated. So column 1, they ran it all. Column 3, they took out all the Whitman riders. Column 4, they took out also the Hanson riders. So and then that generates all the routes, and by the contract generates the cost, because we know how many buses there will be, how many tiers there will be. They'll know how many buses have to, if we eliminated non-mandated, how many buses and tiers they would save. It gives it all for them. So, yeah, I mean, these are Mr. Stanbrook's, and they actually were, said they were going to go back and check them, and we never heard anything from them. So I would assume if they went back and checked them and they were wrong, we would have heard from them right away.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just one more question. Just going back to a comment, Mr. Kane, just in case I know for the folks watching, the board did get an email from the superintendent today where he kind of questions things. Now, I know Mr. Galvin sent him an email back trying to clarify what exactly he was questioning. In one of these scenarios, I believe Mr. Galvin and Mr. Kane have us adopting, the school district adopting this year. The trouble comes, and I think this question was raised early on, is we've already paid, have been assessed one way, so could they technically file the true mandated costs? And
An amendment.
it could pose a double dip type situation. I know Mr. Galvin directly asked that question today.
Yeah, so the email from superintendent was that they had met with Desi yesterday, and that Desi had expressed some concerns, and he didn't really elaborate on what the concerns were, so I was hoping to identify them. One of the things that had already been discussed and was really the reason why they were reaching out to Desi is exactly what Mr. Lamartina said. We were assessed because the reimbursement amount for fiscal '23 comes from the fiscal '22 costs. So if we assess it one way, and then we decide to change the formula in which we then file it on the end of year report, that was what was in question. Now, if that's the issue, then what we've done is figured it another way, and it's actually the way that we submitted it initially, that scenario 6 would assume that we don't get the extra reimbursement that we were hoping for this year. We get the same reimbursement that they had initially calculated. And again, that was the way we originally submitted to the subcommittee of the budget subcommittee. That changes the numbers dramatically because we're lacking the $400,000 or so that the state would kick in extra. But it does apply the non-mandated cost the same way. What it does do though is puts more into the assessment, and it doesn't change the total amount that the towns are paying, but it does kind of change on whose burden it falls onto. But in the far right column, if we did it that way this year, where we didn't, the next year we would see the additional reimbursement from the state, and down at the bottom you see the additional savings that each town would receive next year.
So basically, when you make the shift, whether it's the formula that we're presenting or some variation thereof, it's the second year that you really see the major savings and the big reimbursement coming back from the state. But in the current year, still on the old formula that was implemented where, getting much less, the way it was
It's
assessed.
assessed, so you can understand how there could be some legality on changing the way you actually, even though we've identified that those are our actual true costs. Those are the true costs, and you would think that you'd want to file your true costs on your end-of-year report, but because you've assessed it one way, I can see the fact that you might be looking at it like, well, the towns are paying for the same services that the state is reimbursing. So I could understand that there could be some concerns on that. But that doesn't, in my opinion, stop us from implementing the change in the formula for the way that we assess it in fiscal '23. Even there is some issues on who takes a hit that first year. It almost falls into the perfect use of one-time funds.
Just thinking that.
The very next year that the state's going to be footing the bill, so you go ahead and use, and it wouldn't be the towns using the one-time funds, it would be the district using the one-time funds.
I have a question. Now, is there a possibility, are we overpaying the bus company for a student? If we're coming up with an assessment to the towns of what we're charging, and I'm certainly sure that First Student is sending the region a bill, and numbers are numbers. If you get a bill for $1 million and in the account you have $1.6 million, you got too much money towards that.
I wouldn't say it that there's any overpayment of, it's just that the state is not contributing as much as the state could be contributing.
That's what our
Because they're
hope
not
is.
getting the correct numbers.
By just doing more analysis, and one of the reasons why we wanted to share it, even though it's not, there may be some issues with it, we just think more minds is better. More people thinking about this issue, more people trying to come up with a solution, and I think it'd just be more intelligent. We'll be hopefully getting more reimbursement from the state and paying less as towns, so that's a win-win. Why wouldn't we want to do something like that?
So it's not that they're getting extra money, it's just that we could be getting more, at least in our opinion, be getting a significantly more amount from the state, which would then lessen the burden on both towns.
Now, the business manager doesn't see this?
The business manager actually does, the subcommittee, the superintendent, and the business manager all agreed in 2 subcommittee meetings that I attended that this was a formula that made more sense than the way they were doing it now. The question was there any guidance from the state or from DESE? We reached out to DESE, or I reached out to DESE, Jay Sullivan, and he told me that, because every district does it different, there really isn't any DESE guidance on how these should be calculated. Now, we heard something a little bit different today from the superintendent saying that there appeared to be some concern. What that concern is, he wouldn't elaborate.
Just speaks to the complexity of the issue. We got a direct email from the director of finance at DESE, who, I can't speak word for word, but I think it's in your packet, where he basically said there's no guidance because each region is different. So you have to figure in a number of variables to come up with your costs, So it's a complex issue.
So why wouldn't the region go your formula, receive more state funding and less charging of the towns? Wouldn't that make sense?
I think it is their intention to do that. I think we just need to work through, now that DESE has at least understood the way the district presented it, had some concerns on it. I may make a suggestion that possibly we revisit and have another meeting with DESE, with Mr. Heineman and maybe Mr. Lamattina as the representative so that we can understand, because whether there'll be any written guidance coming from DESE on this, I'm not sure. It was a conversation that the superintendent and the business manager and the chairman of the school committee had with DESE. So I don't know how it was presented and how it was interpreted, DESE's response. So that would be my suggestion, either to get DESI's guidance written so that we can understand what it is, and maybe we'll hear more about it at the school committee meeting tomorrow night, which I'm assuming that's why they didn't respond to me, because they didn't want to, they wanted to wait to discuss it at the meeting. Now,
It appears like they wanted us not to have this conversation.
well, I mean, we just had a meeting downstairs with the finance committee, and there was a quorum of school committee members there, so they heard our, what we were
Right.
formulating and what we were presenting. Now, we're not there, and they're having their meeting with the FinCom. Whether there'll be some further discussion or not, we'll probably run back down afterwards and find out, but
We'll see.
tomorrow, obviously,
If,
we'll.
if they pass the budget, which they choose to pass the budget, right, and nothing's changed on this, and then they put it forward, and there is a savings, they can come back and charge the towns less, right?
No.
It depends on how what you do, because if they go forth and say that they present it the way that they initially assessed it, okay, $487,000 to us. That is not part of the actual assessment, in my understanding. That's a special operating cost.
Right, yeah, but I'm saying,
If they take that, so if they were to now reduce that take it out of our non-mandated line, they wouldn't be able to add it into the assessment.
No,
because
but they
they've
could-
already certified the budget. They can't go higher.
But they could not charge us a certain amount. At South Shore Tech, if we have larger numbers coming in, at the last payment to the towns, we reduce according to how we do it, the statutory method,
Yeah.
right? If in the past we have reduced Whitman's budget by say $16,000 the last payment of the year.
So you've accepted less money than what you assessed, is what you're
Right.
saying.
Because you bill them, monthly. So that's what we do, to offset it. There's no reason why, if this happens, they can't do that, to that line item. And if it's more than that line item, they owe us money. It's that simple.
Nothing simple.
I know, it's,
And this is far from a simple topic. There's no question about it. And that's, I think Sean has made it clear, whether it's this exact formula or some form of it, we are all in agreement, at least Sean and I think everybody here, that the way they do it now isn't the way we're going to accept it anymore.
Right.
I mean, so whether that number ends up being 131 for non-mandated busing or some other number that's closer to 131 than 487, I don't know, but hopefully, in our work with the subcommittee, we'll continue and we can work out some sort of alternate formula if it's not the exact one that we're working with now.
so are they gonna put it forward?
Dan,
I'm sorry.
I don't.
Just briefly, three quick points. One, regarding the Superintendent Simonex email today that was shared with the board, I don't think it is clear, is DESI's concern regarding the fact that this has already been separately assessed to the towns and therefore is not reimbursable? Or is DESI's concern that the formula for determining what the amount is that is mandated to be put into the state perhaps in some way may need some tweaking? So, I think there's an open question there about what exactly is DESI's concern, and I don't think we know that yet.
There's actually a third thing that I've come to my mind that could be a concern, and I think they said it would trigger an audit, it was what they were saying what the issues were. The other thing in my mind that would trigger an audit would be that all of a sudden now Whitman Hanson is asking for $400,000 more in reimbursement. Sure. And if that's the case, that all of a sudden, if you put this in that way, and you are asking for this much money, they're gonna wonder what's going on and trigger an audit. And if that's the case, I would just say, bring it on.
Right,
I mean,
it is what it is.
Not a problem because
Some
we've
sunshine
justified
on that, I
it.
think.
So I'm not quite sure. Again, we don't know, and thank you for.
And two other quick points. That brings me to the other point regarding the audit. So as the board may recall, we unfortunately, the first time in the joint audit of the regional school district, to be paid for by the two towns, We did reissue that. Unfortunately, I think we talked before with this board, Selectman Lamentina and I did, about the reluctance of audit firms to participate in that because this is their busy time of year. That did the reissuance, that closed on Friday. Unfortunately, once again, we did not receive any bids for that. Today, I did reissue that on behalf of the towns of Whitman and Hanson, put it out for another month. I think it is one of the things that we had discussed sort of internally was we probably would not, all things being equal, want either Whitman or Hanson's regular audit firm doing it. That being said, because of the reluctance of, just because they're so busy with ARPA, with the CARES Act, I think it might be something that both towns might want to consider of soliciting this from, in our case, Melanson Heath, now it's Melanson, our regular audit firm. They're certainly a well-respected municipal school district audit firm. I think it would something, obviously we have an existing business relationship with them. I think it's something we could consider. It's open for a month, and asking them for some input on that. Well, the only the dates, but just so the board knows, I also did the one little change and tweak in this now new reissuance yesterday, actually, of the invitation for bids for the audit, is I did add specifically some language regarding non-mandated busing. Obviously, a lot of the work's already been done by you, but as you said, there's another set of eyes, and I think we can certainly add that into the audit requests. The only other final point I want to make too is that there was some discussion in the school committee last week. There was a discussion about if the school district can't put in for reimbursement for this current fiscal year 2022 mandated busing costs because of how it's been charged to the towns, and there's some sort of makeup for fiscal 23 that might be used, some excess and deficiency, the school district's equivalent of free cash for one-time payments. One other thing I just want to mention and make sure this board had heard that there was some discussion in the school committee meeting last week of possibly using some of their one-time revenue, that excess and deficiency, to help supplement the capital plan that they've submitted to the towns, which is very large. You'll see it on the draft warrant. Yeah. But just another sort of piece in this regarding that use of one-time revenue is possibly some relief on the town's capital side of it. So that's all.
Just super quick, just steering it back to non-mandated busing. At the end of the day, is it your belief that the towns of Whitman, and from what you guys have looked at, is it your belief that the towns of Whitman and Hanson have subsidized non-mandated busing for the district?
You want me to answer that?
Well, it's definitely a concern. I mean, if we can get more state reimbursement, then why wouldn't we? If we can intelligently get more state reimbursement from the state, then it's just a smart thing to do. So that's a funny way of twisting it, but
I'll take it as a yes.
Yeah, well, just you look at the number alone, the difference in what the state would reimburse us in next year's budget if we did it is $400,000. That's just 1 year.
My takeaway is pretty clear in his numbers. You take out all non-mandating from both towns, and there's a number that's left standing, and that's what your mandated cost is. So why isn't that going to?
I honestly can't imagine how Desi or anybody would have a problem with that. Again, until we hear directly what their guidance was. But you're running it through honestly, if they do have a problem with it, it's probably better for both the town and the district to eliminate it altogether. Because if we eliminate it, the town saved the money, and if we eliminate it, the district gets way more reimbursement. So why are we doing it if it just doesn't make sense numbers-wise.
Except for the fact that some kids, that should be right,
The services, I understood, but from a numbers standpoint,
Yeah.
It's, Whitman saves $374,000 or $487,000, and the district gains in reimbursement $300,000. That's a $700,000 swing. That's
It's pretty substantial.
It's pretty mind-blowing that how those numbers work.
Is this, in your opinion,
What's that sign in those things?
a case where
No,
that's the formula we've always used, so that's the way we're always going to do it?
I mean, it's hard to say because I really don't know. I know there was some changes in the way, when it was actually made a special operating expense, because I don't think from the beginning it was. Our regional agreement really doesn't say a whole lot about it, but at some point the decision was made to break it out as a special operating cost and charge each town for their quote specific cost on that. So it would be my opinion that whenever that happened, whatever year that was, that it's been being done this way.
There should be language in the regional agreement that speaks to this, though. I think that's pretty clear. Like,
Yeah.
whenever that is updated, this should be.
Yeah, because there isn't really any now.
If I may, that was brought up years ago when Lloyd Patrickman was
Yeah.
was our representative to the schools, where the state said non-mandated busing was, I think, from 2 miles away, but the towns, both towns, agreed that they wanted to change that to 1.5 miles or something like that. So that shortened it up, so we have to pay for that, becomes non-mandated busing.
I think it was almost simpler than that. I think there were certain kids that weren't eligible to have their busing paid for.
Right, and I
They
think that
weren't
was,
eligible because they lived, and I was talking to John about this today. My memory is that there were actually like 3 levels, and it depended upon how old you were.
Right.
Elementary school
Oh, yes,
kids.
right.
Elementary school kids had 1 rubric, might have been 1/2 mile. Middle school kids had 1.5 miles. High school kids had 2.
right,
Okay, so if you lived within 2 miles, you went to high school, the state, nobody's gonna pay for your busing, or the state wasn't gonna pay for your busing. So what the citizens of Whitman wanted, they wanted some of those kids to be able to be bused. That's why they paid for it themselves. It was kind of simple, actually.
Yeah.
You know, the
Back in
state's
the-
not gonna pay to bus these kids, but we don't want our little kids walking to school. We want them bused. The difference between Hanson and Whitman was Hanson had almost no sidewalks at the time. Because they had no sidewalks,
Everything was
most of their
mandated.
kids were mandated.
Yeah.
Whitman was different. But we had parents that didn't want their kids walking on sidewalks either for that long.
Well, the
So
wonderful thing.
that's why that's why we offered to pay, if I remember correctly, but don't trust me, to remember
The wonderful
correctly.
thing about Sean and I's formula is the services continue exactly as they are right now.
yeah.
The non-mandated service continues exactly as it is. The services do not change, yet the town realizes a significant savings in that line, and the district realizes a significant increase in their state reimbursement for mandated busing. It's, you can't, it's the biggest no-brainer in the history of no-brainers in my,
Well,
in my
yeah,
opinion.
what I've had trouble figuring out is, a kid is either a non-mandated kid or a mandated kid. But somehow in these numbers, the numbers that the schools are giving us, you can't,
Well, I think
tell the difference.
to highlight that issue, because it seems clean just to say, well, just break it down per pupil,
yeah.
charge
right.
per pupil. But the difference is, the bus company doesn't charge per pupil, they charge per bus.
Right.
So Hanson and Whitman have roughly the same amount of buses, but Whitman has maybe 700 non-mandated students, and Hanson has about 200, or a little under 200. So we're getting charged for 700 with roughly the same amount of buses. Hanson's getting charged for only 200 with roughly the same amount of buses. So you can see the inequity there.
But you always hear the complaint that a lot of the buses are a lot of empty seats. But the ruling is you need to have a seat for every student that's eligible.
If Whitman has the same amount of buses, but if there are roughly 30 students, or could be 30 students assigned, and Hanson has only 15, say, from the bus company's point of view, you still have to run a bus. So I think that kind of highlights the discrepancy. They have to somehow tease out the true costs of what it is per town, because simply doing it per pupil doesn't feel right,
And I believe that our formula does that.
Yeah, right.
And correct me if, and that's kind of how Mr. Stanbrook broke it out, right? So to shorten it up, I guess a conversation, we need 3 buses for non-mandated riders. Okay, well, Whitman, we might have 52 kids on each one of those buses. Hanson needs 2 buses to meet their non-mandated program. They may only have 15 kids on each bus, but we're paying for our buses. And when John showed me this, that's what their formula does. If we need X number of buses, we're paying for that, the actual cost. Hanson is paying their actual cost. This is a win for everyone, and we really need to make sure it happens like this.
So how'd you make out with the finance committee?
Basically a much more abbreviated discussion because we only had 15 minutes with them. So we just kind of, did the overview. I think we'll probably be spending some more time back then when they can give us more time, but we wanted to get to them prior to the budget meeting tomorrow night by the district so that they were kind of understanding what was going on. And I think, they understood that. I'm sure they have a lot of questions that they may have, but.
Thanks for all the work, guys.
Thanks for having us.
It'd be quite interesting to see what they do with it.
I'm curious.
It is a management issue. It's a management of the school department should be able to figure it out. I mean, that's what you pay them for.
I think given the tight budget situation in general, these types of things need to be on the forefront of what people are doing, trying to find efficiencies wherever we can because money's tight.
One of the things that we had an issue a few years ago, and we still have it, I think, about whether or not the middle school kids in Whitman can get taught foreign languages.
Yeah.
And we were told they didn't have the money to do that. So Whitman was by lottery. Hanson kids got it. Whitman kids were by lottery. And eventually, and I couldn't understand why a French teacher or a Spanish teacher couldn't split time, be scheduled to split times between the two towns. And it seems like there are some simple ways to handle that situation. But it didn't happen. And then what happened was, well, we're not going to give foreign language to anybody. That's what happened last year. We'll solve this by nobody gets it.
Yeah.
And that's not.
I will say, when we reached out to leadership of the school, they did welcome us into the budget subcommittee. They did allow us to give like a presentation kind of like this, and that allowed them to do some research on their end. So they do seem to be embracing more of this kind of thing, which, I think is helpful, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've noticed a change, over the last year or so with the cooperation. But on the other hand, in the back of my mind, and I hate this is a worm, and the worm has in it circuit breaker, it has in it statutory method, and it has in it non-mandated busing.
And then what else is there?
I just.
So the worm's name is Randy?
No, it isn't. No,
Mr. Lamartine.
no, but I do have to, in public, I think I have to appreciate Lamartina and Salvucci wearing green ties tonight.
There you go, yeah.
For St. Patrick's Day. Whereas Evans, and my mother's name was Gilligan, not wearing
With the yellow.
Green ties.
Hey, and I'm Italian, too.
Pay my respects, Scott.
Hey,
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
what the, huh?
And,
Good work, guys. Good work.
if I could real quick, on the statutory method, since we're discussing it, I have 17 two-town regional school district regional agreements, if either of you guys want to see it.
On how they did
This is their full regional agreement. I was looking at how they assessed the towns.
busing.
No, for statutory
methodology.
method. This is from 4 years ago. But if you want to look and see how they
Yeah, it would be
charge for
interesting.
busing,
Definitely.
I can send them to you.
Yeah, because you remember the proposed regional agreement not too long ago? 2018 was that? They did add some language around this. In my opinion, it's still relatively vague, but they did attempt to
Yeah.
update that a little bit, but yeah, please, thank you.
Yeah, send it on.
Think.
Thanks, guys.
So what are we gonna do with that people that never showed? We gonna put them on next agenda, or they don't get their license?
Yeah, Laurie, do we have any idea? Do we expect these people to be here? Okay.
Are they here now?
Well, we can't act on it. We just did have to wait until 26 probably. Okay, ATA HR Procurement and Grants Director position. We were given the updated job descriptions, and our job, I think, is to choose what we want to do. And then come up, and then I'd ask for volunteers to be on a search committee. And if you can get that to Lincoln, if you want to be involved. I'm not sure I can do it. There's some other things going on, and that I might not be able to spend the time on it. But Dan, Brian, Justin, Randy, if you can, if two of you could work with Lincoln, roughly the same process, go through applications, but we're not going to encourage as many applications as we did the last time, and get 3 or 4 people to be ready for an interview with us. So, what do you guys think about the assistant town administrator versus the procurement and grants director positions? Which
Okay. One of the questions, Lincoln and I talked about it. One of the questions I have is, if in fact we choose not to go into assistant town administrator and Lincoln is on vacation or out,
Yeah.
we need to authorize someone else to sign warrants,
Yeah.
payroll and stuff like that. I guess it's the importance of whether we want a procurement officer and, someone that deals with the payroll and the, what do I call it?
I don't see it. I don't see a problem with having, if we were to choose to go with the HR
person, yeah.
and procurement and grants director position, if we would choose to go with that, I don't see any problem with designating that person as the TA substitute. If you look at the 2 job descriptions, they're almost identical.
Right,
We're looking for the same skills from both people.
right, and if,
After the last meeting and after thinking about it and saying this, I think I'm as happy with, I think I'm happy enough with going for an assistant town administrator again, with the specificity that's in the job description. Where it says where it says it's somewhere anyway. The thing that Dan was looking for. If I can find it. This is a full-time, 40 hours a week position. Attendance at night meetings is expected, something simple like that. That's in both.
Right.
That's in both job descriptions. The difference are the salaries. I mean, the procurement and grants and HR director, you put in at something, what was that?
85,000 to 100,000 is what I suggested.
100. Is that based upon any research that
It is. Yep.
would be acceptable to somebody that's going for that kind of a job?
I think so. I think I just put in the caveat that I think I mentioned a little bit, one-on-one with some of you in discussions, and then at our last meeting. And, it's not an employer's market, right? That's unfortunate and frustrating, but, I think we all sort of know that with the great quit and with inflation, et cetera. So I certainly would hope, and I believe, based on some of the market, looking out there and in some equivalent towns in terms of population, in terms of budget size, that we could find someone good. But I guess, we won't know until we do it, right? So.
Yeah.
to have an HR person and then somebody that writes grants, do grants ever run out? Is there always a time where there are no grants available? So then is there enough HR work for a person just to be doing that? Or,
And procurement.
huh?
And procurement.
And procurement.
The thing is, when we were interviewing, we were going through the applications the last time, the things that Lincoln wanted assistance on were grants, procurement, and HR. So it's
And I would certainly, if it was the HR, if it was the HR procurement and grants director position, I did put in that language regarding works on special projects as required as the situation dictates. And I think there would be, right? I mean, I'm sure there are things not under Human Resources, Procurement, and Grants Director, that if we had the right person with the right skill set and background, they'd be great at, and I would encourage them to do. If that's in their skill set and this is something they've worked on before or want to learn, I'd certainly encourage them to do it. So, I think we have that flexibility.
I think one of the main things I'm looking for is for a person, whoever we hire, takes enough, takes pressure off of you so that, like I've always said, daily operation facilities need to be taken care of, There's always daily things that, whether it's documents that need to be signed or whatever, has to be done on a daily basis to make the town run, or at least run efficiently. And to take that pressure off you, whether it's an HR person or an assistant town administrator, I mean, something has to be done so that all of a sudden we don't get a desk like this with other department heads said, please, can you sign this so I can get it done, right? The daily operation. It's being a manager for 40-something years with my company. Those are the things that need to be looked at, and whatever it takes to get that done.
Okay, let's talk about the two.
So I think, at least in my mind, although they're very similar, I think the assistant town administrator gives us a little more flexibility rather than carving out special projects as required and other, trying to squeeze the HR person into an ATA role, more or less. And it also mirrors the organizational structure that we have in police and fire really well with the chiefs and deputy chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it makes more sense for us to kind of stick with what we have.
Yeah. I'm good with that. I think I told Lincoln this a week ago that the assistant town administrator, why not? I mean, I think it makes sense. And it does, the job descriptions are so similar that it becomes our choice. What title do we go with? And do we want to go up to 105,000 if that's necessary? Yes.
Well, since you're going to be the one working with this person all the time, which do you
Question I was going to ask.
Which do you think would better fit how you want to organize the department?
I think, I do actually think the HR, procurement grants kind of make sense. To be frank, I mean, I think when we were first thinking about the assistant town administrator position, it was sort of like, well, we've always had that. Whitman's used to it. Great, fine. No reason to reinvent the wheel. From my perspective, there's a certain amount of work that needs to get done in the office. It's too much for two people, right? It's too much for Lori and me. It needs to be a third person. If, with all that being said, we have this amount of work to do, as far as how you slice it up, and with taking into account the fact that, unfortunately, we're not in an employer's market, that we do have inflation going on, that I do think we're going to have trouble being competitive with what the range is that we have. As frustrating as that is, and I'm as equally frustrated, if not more, than anyone with, I think, what that reality is. I think if we want to stay as competitive as possible, and we want this amount of work to be done, I do think it makes us a little bit more competitive with having it be an HR, procurement, and grants director, because that assistant town administrator, the title, somebody is going to expect some kind of pay premium for it. So that's my 2 cents. I think
The other thing about why I asked you that is because, as we know, that money was one of the issues that we ran into last time. So I think if we were in the step below, maybe it's more in line with what everybody's hoping for. But
Just on those sides.
it's tough in this market, and I get that. Yeah, it's an employee's market. You're going to have to probably overpay to get somebody to commit. So if you have to overpay at the lower amount, it might be to our advantage if the person's going to be doing probably the same work anyway.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything special to the title per se. Again, I come back to, here's the amount of work that we want to get done. Here's the type of work we want to get done. Matters a little less to me what it's called. So,
I mean, our previous assistant town administrator, Lisa, I mean, she did grants and she also did procurement. She didn't do HR, I don't believe. But she did those other two aside from being the assistant town administrator. So, I mean,
That's actually what she did as assistant town administrator.
right, but I'm saying, as an assistant town administrator, she did grants and she did procurement, but she, if somebody was gonna purchase something, whatever, they had to go through her. She didn't do personnel. She didn't do HR, I believe. I could be wrong. Did she ever do that, Lori? Some of it, yes. Some of it? So, it may be able to, if we went with the highest scale for assistant town administrator, it may be, if we added all those functions, then there's a reason to go to the highest scale. But that being said, we'd have to notify previous people. I think that, if we go,
We're doing a new
A new thing,
search.
okay.
A new search,
yeah,
yeah. I think it makes some sense to talk to some people that we looked
yeah,
at before.
that may want to reapply if we put it out there.
Do you want to chime in? The other?
For me, title doesn't mean as much as
Right.
we're hitting the qualification box. That, and then the process after we, I really think once we go through the process, that's when the nuts and bolts, we probably should have a session prior to any offers.
Yep.
But
Okay, so, let's have a vote that's not a vote. Let's, what title would you like to advertise, Justin? Make a choice.
I think I'd still prefer ATA.
ATA, Brian,
I'll go with the HR.
HR,
Assistant town administrator.
okay. You,
Sorry.
I would probably go with the HR and procurement.
so we got 2 HRs and 2 ATAs.
It's up to you, Mr.
Spotlight's
Chairman.
on you.
I wish you'd have gone to me next, but I didn't want to put you in that spot.
Wait a minute, I got a call, you want to flip it?
I think, you're sure that you wanted to go HR?
I do insofar as, with just the realistic considerations at hand. That is to say, that we will be paying a premium for the HR title, but nevertheless, the work that we want to get done is essentially the same.
Yeah.
So I think with those sort of just realistic
Yeah.
things in mind, that yes, I would go for the HR just so we can get somebody in.
Okay, then I'll go with your recommendation on that then. We'll do HR. And you believe that salary range is an adequate one?
I hope so. I think so.
Okay.
I think so with all the data that I have.
All right, so before we have our next meeting, if a couple of you could let Lincoln know that you'll
I got
be
too much on
involved
my
with the
plate.
search.
I got too many meetings on my
Involved with
plate
the search.
now.
I can commit until the end of May, but then life changes.
Big time.
Big time.
No sleep.
Okay, well then, the rest of you think about it, and
If I could, I think,
I'd post-
sounds like we're good with this job description.
Yeah.
I'll get that job description posted out. We'll put it out for, I don't know, at least 3 weeks, I think,
Okay.
maybe a month,
yeah,
I think is appropriate. And certainly on the MMA.
go from there.
Yep.
Okay.
And if I may, on this thing, if in fact we do that, right, we do that, and down the line, 6 months, a year from now, we find that the person can take on more, maybe we can increase
All right.
the responsibilities and whatever. And
Okay,
go with,
We can think about that somewhere
Yeah,
down the line.
down the line.
All right, but not right now.
just a thought.
Thanks for the thought. Building commissioner position.
Yes, so you have in your packet a suggested job description.
Yep.
It's largely the same as the current job description, except it includes the things we've been talking about, namely some of the increased amount, not quality, but amount of coverage and support for our zoning and permitting volunteer boards, so Zoning Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission, Planning Board. I think it also recognizes that this would be a full-time position and would also have, as the board knows, included in the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget, there would be a facilities manager, a separate facilities manager, but certainly there'd still be a lot of interplay between these two positions and having expert advice from this position. And then also being able, I think, to do some of the follow-up and enforcement of conditions that are put in place by Zoning Board of Appeals. No knock whatsoever on Bob, but it's just extremely difficult. Honestly, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I don't know how he gets done what he does get done in a part-time position. So that is all reflected in this. What I'd suggest is, I think that the salary is what we had discussed at the upper range, and certainly is in concert with similar sized communities and similar communities in terms of number of building permits. What I'd suggest is if this job description works for the board, I suggest we similarly put it out for a month. Certainly on the Mass Municipal Association website, get it out on there's the Massachusetts Association of Federation of Building Inspectors, so they have like a listserv. There's somebody at the state with the state building code folks who can get it out to folks and then see what we get back for applications, and that we have a process. I'd certainly want Bob Curran in that process. I would also want Julia Carter, who is the administrative assistant, in that office to be part of that process. Certainly, if a selectman wants to be there at the beginning or on a second round, that we can have that conversation. And I would also want, if they're available, possibly John Goldrosen, the chair of the ZBA, and George Porter, chair of the Conservation Commission, to be somewhere in that mix if they chose to participate, seeing as how we're looking at that expanded. So probably having a first round like that, and a second round, and if the full board wants to interview candidates, just want to get some feedback on that.
Does everyone all right with that job description? And
I'm okay with the job description. Do we need to get town meeting approval? Because this is a pretty substantial increase to the salary. What's that?
When is Bob?
So Bob's given his retirement date verbally as May 26th. So I would say, I think we'll, by the right around the time when a decision will be hopefully being made regarding the building commissioner, hopefully that's right around the time when town meeting will be making the decision.
Article 2 is on the warrant, right? I mean, this position is
Correct.
included. So yeah, we definitely need town meeting approval.
There'll be hands going up on that because it'll be such an increase. So we'd have to sell it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to hire somebody and then not
Right.
No, we
get
can't.
approval
Right.
from the town.
Yeah.
The end of the search would have to be after
Yeah, I
town
think
meeting.
it's a little bit of a dance, right? Because I do think it would be great to have at least 2 weeks of overlap
Yeah.
between the new and the old building commissioners, but hopefully, right, if town meeting happens May 2nd, we'll have an answer on that. And then separately, there is that article on the draft warrant that would have been taken up at the January 31st town meeting to make a transfer, so that if the person started on, say, this second week of May, that person's salary would be covered in this current fiscal year.
Yeah, Article P3.
Correct. But you're right, we don't know for sure yet.
But to answer Randy's thing, we're going from a part-time person to a full-time person, so
This is
salary may not be as,
It's gonna red flag at
Yeah.
town meeting.
Yeah.
They're gonna wanna know why.
well, he's going from part-time to full-time,
Well, I mean,
position,
I
yeah.
think they want more of it. It's a-
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a very solid footing for the explanation of why we want it, but I would hate to hire somebody and.
Right.
Oh, without a doubt, right, and all of a sudden say sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless they wanted to go
We'll have
part-time.
practice at that.
Unless they want to go part-time.
Okay, you have what you need on that, huh?
I do, thank you.
Motion to adjourn is in order.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're out. Okay, we're reopening the meeting in order to have a public hearing that we were going to have at 7:10, but we're going to have it at 8:20 instead. The public meeting with respect to the application of Unique Auto Group Incorporated, Alessandra Di Oliveira. Is that the way to pronounce it? Is that okay? For a Class 2 auto dealer's license on the premises located at 263 Bedford Street, subject to final inspection approval of the building commissioner, zoning enforcement officer. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask of these poor people who've been waiting around all night? No one has any questions, okay?
Well, let them get up and make a spiel, I mean, if it's a new company.
Dan.
Who told you to wait downstairs?
I mean,
Fred, were you with these guys downstairs and?
Yeah,
did
I
you-
mean, they had to listen to me. That's
But they had a-
should get a license.
Then
Fred,
let's
they
just,
had-
let's vote. That's
Fred, they had an
enough
appointment.
punishment.
Fred, they had an appointment at 7:10. You could have said, you could have directed them in the right direction.
I thought they were interested in the school committee meeting, meeting with the FinCom.
Yikes. Okay, you know what? You don't have to say a word. I'm gonna call for a vote.
Okay.
All those in favor of the motion?
aye,
Okay,
simple.
you have it.
We're all set.
Now,
Thank you very much, guys. I'm so sorry for that. Hang on, before you leave.
it just, would,
I gotta get some business.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
okay, we also, now, because it was approved, we have to take action to rescind the Class 2 auto dealer's license for Michael is it Irish?
Yes.
St. Patty's Day.
Doing business as MDI Auto Brokers and Repair at the time the Class 2 auto dealer's license is issued to Unique Auto Group Incorporated. So we need to rescind that auto
Okay,
license.
I'll
Is
make
there a
that motion.
Is
Second.
there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Motion to adjourn is now in order.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.